for being here today and your time, and I think everyone watching us live right now on Community 7 as well. So I wanted to give you a bit of an idea about tonight. We're here tonight as the City of Billings to give you folks all the information that you need. We're not trying to sway you yes or no. We want you to walk out of here well equipped with all the information that you need. So when you get your ballot the week of October 18th, you will be able to decide if you feel this is the best thing for Billings. For tonight, we do have a presentation that these folks right next to me are going to give you, and then we'll get to a Q&A session right after that. So for the questions, we will have a microphone that roams around the room. You just raise your hand when we get to that point. We do have a few other options for submitting a question as well. If you want to get ahead of the game and write down your question on an index card, we do have some on the table by the entrance. You can just fill it out and drop it in the box there, or you can go ahead and scan this QR code, and that'll take you to our website and the Parks Bond question form that you can fill out online, and that'll get shot right into my email inbox, and then we'll be able to ask the question to the room when we have our Q&A session. So now I would like to introduce you to our speakers for this evening. We have our City Administrator, Chris Kukulski. We have Police Chief Rich St. John. We have Eric Owen, who is the Vice President of Public Health and Clinical Services for Riverstone Health. Then we also have our Recreation and Wellness Specialist for Parks and Recreation, Jennifer Brown. We have our Parks Director, Mike Pigg. We have our Recreation Superintendent, Corey Thompson. And then we also have Steve Arviskow with Big Sky Economic Development here with us. And last but not least on the end there, we have our Finance Director, Andy Zeller. So he'll be here to answer some finance questions after the presentation if you guys are curious about the cost and the bond. For now, I'll go ahead and hand this over to our City Administrator, Chris Kukulski.
Thank you, Victoria. So want to just set some context here before I hand it over to the Chief. So for at least the past 4 years, we've been pushing to improve the health and safety of Billings. And in 2022, this current City Council adopted these 5 strategies to move us forward in that direction. So we're here to talk about one of the 5, but I think it's important to just highlight in brief the work that is happening across all these areas. So first, it is to improve the safety of Billings. And you have seen 2 of the last 3 years, investments you have been kind enough to make directly into those efforts. It is to improve the built environment. What I like to say is quality over quantity. We've redone our codes for development in the community for the first significant overhaul since about the 1970s. And that too is about building and redeveloping neighborhoods and business districts that tend to hold property values and tend to have lower crime rates than others. We want to and are continuing to invest in our core infrastructure. You expect, I don't want you to have to think about at all, frankly, that when you turn on your faucet, you're going to have safe, clean drinking water, that our roads, it's construction season, so you see a few cones around, and there are millions of dollars going into pipes under the ground and things like the airport replacement, and as well as you will begin to see in the upcoming months, the construction of 2 reservoirs on the west side of town and a new water plant. All of that is critical to our economy. Tonight, we're focused on this strategy of increasing parks, trails, recreation, and cultural investments. And Steve, frankly, is going to talk later, our Big Sky Economic Development Representative. Steve is going to talk more about talent attraction and retention and how all of us in this room, I suspect, and our children find themselves in positions where they get to decide where they're going to live and what folks are looking for. And last but certainly not least, though it is more of an internal function, it is to build a high-performance organization. You have roughly 1,000 public servants who work for you. Having them develop a culture consistent with our core values, consistent with working collectively to make this a better community is helps us greatly. So With that, I'm going to turn it over to the chief, and he's going to kind of kick us off in connecting public safety and this conversation about a significant investment in park recreation and trails. Chief.
Well, thank you, everybody, and appreciate you taking time to come tonight and listen to this presentation. The 10,000-foot view from law enforcement is very, very simple. That vibrant, well-maintained, active parks reduces crime. I would invite you to get into the internet and Google vibrant parks or anything like that with crime reduction, and you will see study after study that shows a direct correlation to that. And there's a lot of spin-offs with that. But that's the 10,000-foot view. But what I would say is that we know that a lot of the concepts that we want to implement here directly affect not only businesses but residences and the parks itself. You'll hear later about a concept called CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. You'll see that referenced on this slide right here. And essentially what it does is creates an environment which is conducive to safety and making it very welcoming for people to use in this particular case, the parks. Two of those concepts are what we call territorial reinforcement and space management. And this is exactly what we're looking for here. So on the territorial reinforcement, when the parks are active and being used, citizens will be there in that space and have a feeling of ownership. And they're also going to take pride in it, and it shows that the community and the city, in this particular case, are proud of the assets that we have. It encourages reporting, whether it is maintenance issues or whether we have bad actors doing things in the park. You have that ownership, you have that social investment there, and so we have an increased reporting, which of course is essential for us. A second concept is what we call space management, and this would fall directly on the Parks Department. Proper maintenance. We want to make sure things are cared for, they're looked after, that things are quickly cleaned up. If we have acts of vandalism or graffiti, that we get on it right away. Again, it speaks to the social investment and the pride that we have in our parks. And then, of course, it is activating things for our citizens to get involved in. The elephant in the room, and I know there'll be a few questions for this at the end of the day, is why should I spend my money on this when we need a jail? We absolutely need a jail. Okay, they're running at 50% over capacity. We could use a facility that houses 500 to 1,000, and I'll guarantee you we can fill it. There are some bad people here doing bad things, and that's where they need to be. But I'd ask you to change your thinking for a second on this and look at the parks issue and the violence as, not so much the parks, but the violence as a public health matter. Not only does it affect the victims of the crime, it affects the surrounding neighborhood. We all have heard of some of the incidents taking place around town, and who are you hearing it from? The neighbors. It's making people nervous. And so when we approach the violence as a health issue, specifically an epidemic, what is the best way to deal with an epidemic? That is prevention. And so what we are saying here is that the development of the parks as proposed, keeping good care of them, being good stewards, all the things I referred to before, will prevent. The people that are going to go into jail, they definitely need to be there. The police department has spent a considerable amount of time on what is the most effective crime prevention strategy, and that is prevention. We are trying to divert people out of the justice system, get them where they need to be, and in this particular case, this is a great tool for that, especially for our kids that need things to do and good places to do that. And we need to reestablish the family unit. If we can do that with the help of the parks, we're going to be a much better community. And obviously, I'll be available for questions later. Thank you. And Eric is following me up. Oops. There, you figure it out.
I'll see what I can do. Oh, now we're stuck. You got us stuck. TA.
See what's going on. Oh. Okay.
There we go.
Everyone close your eyes, no peeking. Okay. And we're there. Okay, yeah.
All right, thanks. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming out. I'm really excited to see so many people here engaging in this conversation tonight because it is a really important issue for our community. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the connection between public health and our personal health and parks and green spaces and opportunities for recreation. So we know that access to safe, welcoming opportunities for physical activity and recreation not only improves our physical health, but also our mental well-being and overall community safety. Chief John referred to studies. I'm from the health department, so I get to be the data geek. And so we have lots of studies that have shown the benefit from exposure to green spaces and our natural surroundings, reducing stress levels within just minutes of entering those spaces. We're also generally, as people, hardwired for social connection. Simply being around other people can have many of the same benefits of green spaces while also reducing social isolation and loneliness. Because of this, we also need to consider how we can develop our recreational spaces to include gathering spaces in parks, trails, and indoors. Those positive impacts from those spaces are multiplied when you include into that a multi-generational setting element. Our community's health and well-being benefits from enhancements to our parks and recreation by decreasing isolation, increasing physical activity, decreasing violence, and offering more ready access to those who may have fewer opportunities to access those spaces otherwise. So some key points from some of the studies that are out there that I wanted to share with you. Currently, every 3 years, we do a community health needs assessment at the health department. And so we know that here in Yellowstone County right now, we have 2 times the national average of suicides. 15% of our adults who responded to that survey feel currently unsafe walking alone in their own neighborhoods. Some other key studies have found that recreational programming, specifically after-school programs for youth, are associated with positive outcomes. One report found that adolescents who do not participate in after-school activities are upwards of 27% more likely to be arrested and 49% more likely to use drugs than kids who do have after-school activities to participate in. Studies have found that recreation centers, through building that community connection and pride in our community, have contributed to increased pride in the community and also increased property values of the homes around those centers. A study out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania found that when cities make concerted efforts to take derelict properties and green them, it has a measurable impact on a reduction in firearm assaults. This study found a 39% reduction in firearm results in that area when they went through the city and made a concerted effort to turn some of their empty lots into parks. So simple things that we can do that can have measurable and significant impacts on the safety of our community. So, Mike, I think you're next.
Good evening. I also want to thank everybody for being here. It's great to see such a large crowd. I get the privilege of showing everybody on the map what this is going to look like. So when we were putting this together as a community, we were trying to decide how could we make the biggest impact on public safety, public health, and what we decided was we needed to touch all areas of the city. So from Castle Rock Park all the way down to the West End Reservoir, from the multi-generational facility by Amon Park to South Park. It was to get activation in all of the neighborhoods all across town, make it more convenient for people to take their kids and their families to a park that's local to them, close to them, and not have to drive halfway across town to get into that recreational space. Very important. That was one of the key issues that we came with. So we came with $73 million worth of total projects. That's if we were to fund everything or we had to pay for everything. But through some other financial resources, we have the bond package down to $143 million. I think Chris is going to go over the numbers a little bit more, but we activate 16 different locations, and it also includes some very important trail locations for us. So like the Stagecoach Trail that takes us from the valley up to the rims, and also like the tunnel underneath Highway 3 to give us a safe access over to the inner belt loop. Now I'm going to turn it over to Corey to talk some recreation for you.
Thank you, Mike. Let me advance the slide here. There we go. So Mike talked about activating park spaces, and when we looked at this total package, what we identified was a need for year-round indoor space for kids, for adults, and for seniors. And so we looked at here is the opportunity to provide community centers, and these are not large facilities, but they will provide multi-use space for kids' activities. They'll provide gymnasium space for sports leagues and whatnot. And I can tell you right now, currently our resources include the North Park Neighborhood Center, the Zimmerman Center, and then we do a little bit of programming out of Veterans Park. Every summer we have over 1,000 kids enrolled in summer day camps at those three facilities that are quite old and not very compatible for our programming. Again, this provides year-round recreation, and again, it spreads to all parts of the city that will help us kind of activate those spaces and again, for year-round activities, which will bring me to the multi-generational recreation center. This would really become the hub of year-round recreation for indoor activities. It has a lot of components that will cover a lot of different aspects and opportunities for kids, adults, and for seniors to enjoy. On the aquatic side of things, we'll have a leisure pool, and that's for families and kids, water slides, interactive play features, year-round activities for kids to basically come swimming, birthday parties, those types of things. 50-meter pool will allow our 4 high school swim teams to have a place to practice. Will allow for swim meets, also things like water aerobics, kayak lessons. So there's a multitude of different things we'll be able to do in a 50-meter pool. We talk about the sport courts, and we talked as a group about full-size gyms that we can get adults into, or college-age kids. But we also looked at, boy, wouldn't it be great for youth? So we can break those courts down into 8 junior high-sized courts. They're great for volleyball, other sports like pickleball, indoor soccer, wrestling. And then we talked about the ice. 2 sheets of ice will allow our community to expand hockey. For kids and for adults. It'll allow more time for figure skating and curling and learn to skate lessons. And then I think it's also important to realize there's an elevated track for walking year-round in a safe space and open exercise areas as well. Couple components to the rec center is the Suburra has pledged $25 million to reduce the capital cost for the rec center. And the TBID, the Tourism Business Improvement District, has pledged to cover any operational losses for up to 10 years. And with that, I will turn it over to Chris again.
Thank you, Corey. So on that operational loss side, we are talking through the analysis, anywhere from $550,000 to $750,000 a year. The TBID. We just saw the second draft of the agreement between the TBID and the city this afternoon. It's going to come in front of the city council in a work session. Is for them to cover a number not to exceed $800,000 a year. So the bottom line is there, increase the bed tax from $2 to $4. So people who are staying in our hotels are the ones that are actually covering the operational loss instead of the rest of us. What this shows us is the breakdown of how project costs are, as Mike mentioned. The total project costs are in the neighborhood of $174 million. The bonded amount, the debt that the public's being asked to consider taking on, is the $143 million. The difference between those is $25 million coming from the South Billings Urban Renewal District, some other grants and funding, and a commitment, requirement that the community raise not less than $6 million in private funding before we launch any of these projects. In fact, that's where this next slide comes, is if you, the city council was concerned about how we would pull off all these projects. How will we do this transparently? How will we show that the commitment and these conversations we're having back in 2023 are going to be carried forward in 24, 25, and 26 when these projects are being built out? So that it is roughly a 7-page resolution that specifically outlines, first and foremost, section 1, 2, has a dollar figure tied to each of the park projects. Now it's, and it also, in that same section, section 4, the council must be presented before debt is taken on. What are the amenities that are going to be paid for with this particular set of borrowing? And they will be the final say in the approval of those projects. There will be community stakeholder groups, committees that will also be formed around each project so that we can get community input, both to be consistent with the master planning that was done, as well as if we've got to make tough decisions 2 years from now, 18 months from now, if bid prices come in such a way that today we thought we could do these 6 things in the park, and the bids come in another way, they will help advise so that ultimately when we go back in front of the city council for approval, we've got community engagement as well as staff making recommendations to the council. So I would encourage, I've heard some people talk about a blank check to the city. It is not a blank check. We have to, by law, abide by the bond language, which you'll be asked to approve or deny, and then that resolution is a statement of position by the city council. Can it be amended? Yes, it could be amended in the future, but only by the council can it be changed. Now I think I hand it off to Jennifer, our illustrious gal who keeps people moving every time I'm in the senior center.
Yes. So I'm Jennifer. I'm one of the recreation and wellness specialists. I oversee and run our community and senior center. I am one of 4 rec specialists, and I'm going to be talking a little bit today about our current programming with the recreation department. We do recreation and wellness programming for ages from all the way from youth all the way up to seniors. And currently right now, our youth programming, if anyone has children, grandchildren, on April 1st or when our summer programming becomes open, it is everyone in there and they're registering right away because they know they have a small amount of time to get their kids in the programming that we have. We have quality programming, it's accessible, and we have options within the city that help all, doesn't matter your economic background. We provide programming all year round, but right now, especially with our youth programming, we are at max capacity. We have no room to be able to add any more programming within the city because of our space. Currently, we run a lot of our youth programming during the school year in schools. In the summer, we use them in the 3 parks we talked about, as well as programming within our aquatics department at the 2 pools. With aquatics right now, we can only do it 3 months out of the year. And when we talk aquatics, we do run aquatic programming at Rose Park for fitness and wellness programming that is joint friendly. There are a lot of individuals in our community who cannot do exercise above ground, can't do any kind of fitness, but can do it in water. And it is joint friendly and it helps them stay stronger. I've got to pull up my slide right here. And with that being said, a lot of the stuff now teeing off to our senior population, which the majority of what I do is with seniors. At the Community and Senior Center, we have also partnered with the Adult Resource Alliance, and we provide programming right now at their 2 facilities. And we, in the last, I'd say 4 years, we went from having about 40% of our programming, wellness, fitness, staying active, and 60% leisurely, having great, interactions with each other, but not really moving your bodies, to flipping it to where now about 60% of our activities you see are the health and wellness programming that helps keep you strong in place. We are now at max capacity at that. I have not much more room within the city because of our space. Some fun statistics, not really, but we have statistics in Montana that 1 in 3 individuals who are over the age of 65 fall each year. And falling is absolutely not a part of aging. Falling is due to you not having strong muscles. It's from being sedentary. And so one of the best ways we know to help prevent falls that can lead to many different health issues, including up to death, is to get active and moving. We provide programming now that is both anywhere from being in a seated position to standing. We have people that start in a seated position and then can get activated into doing some of the standing stuff. Our programming, we want to make sure that it's inclusive and that you can get strong in place where you're at. So a lot of our programming right now, currently at the Adult Resource Alliance, has really focused in the last year or 2 on doing a lot of strength training from the chair so that you have the comfort within your chair and the stability. And with that we are seeing individuals getting stronger. I can tell you I'm a fitness instructor as well, and I teach a lot of our classes, or I sub, and I've been able to see seniors get stronger as they age. You don't have to get weak, and so that's where our programming really focuses on creating that. But again, right now we are at max capacity, and our senior population is growing. It's getting bigger, and we really need to also help focus on giving individuals opportunity where they're at. Since we've done more programming in the Heights now, we have people, you'd think just coming from the Heights to the Senior Center downtown wouldn't be very far, but in the winter especially, it can be a significant ways to go. And so being able to have programming in areas where seniors can go within their community is great. Currently, we only have 1 spot on the west end, and that's the Adult Resource Alliance on 1505 Avenue D, and we are only right now able to do 2 classes. We are working with some expansion, but only for a class or 2. So currently these are kind of the programs that we are at, and we want to continue to help activate our seniors and our youth and all in between. And now we're going over to Steve from Big Sky Economic Development.
Thank you, Jennifer. I feel like we should all stand up now and not be seated. That made me really nervous. But thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Chris, thank you for asking me to be a part of the panel tonight, and thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it. For those I haven't met, I'm Steve Arviska. I'm Executive Director for Big Sky Economic Development. We're a public-private partnership that helps to lead economic and community development in the Billings area. And I want to share with you, arm you with some information as you consider this question. I want to give you kind of the economic development information, so that can just be in your calculus as you think through, how do I want to make this decision? I want to give you some information from that perspective to help you make your decision that way. I can tell you that our board of directors 2 years ago adopted, we adopt every 2 years a handful of strategic priorities. And 2 years ago, one of our 4 strategic priorities was to help the community identify a comprehensive plan on funding parks, trails, and recreation in our community. 2 years ago, that was something we wanted to be a part of, push toward. Why? Why would your economic development organization years ago say this is important to us? That's the information that I want to share with you tonight. We have a tool that we use to help us do economic analysis and to help us look at jobs and where our market is. It's called Jobs EQ. And you can go into that source and you can look at all the job openings in our community at any particular time. So a couple of months ago in July, I had a presentation to give, and I said, all right, tell me what's going on in the job market today, July of 2023. And just by a quick glance, we can identify all the job postings in our community on that particular day. And the number of job postings as you can see up there, are over 5,000 job postings on that one day. Oh, you can't see it? Oh, you can't see it. I do economic development well. I don't do slides well. Okay, there you go. Now you can see it. All right, thank you. Danny, thank you, Councilman. I appreciate the help there in the crowd. So 5,073. Now, what you have to keep in mind, people mine our market looking for people to take out of our market to go to other communities to work, especially nurses. So we get some job postings that are, hey, do you want to be a traveler nurse? And so you got to take some of those out. It would still be well over 4,000 job openings representing about 1,700 unique employers in our community on that one day, July of this year. I'm not sure what the number would be today, but we could run those numbers for you. We just got this information from the Montana Department of Labor and Industry in their Labor Day report not that long ago. And it basically says this, that our economy and the industries in our community are growing at such a pace that by 2023, our active workforce would need to be over 121,000 active workforce. I ran the numbers here a couple of months ago. Our active workforce in our MSA, so Billings area, is about 98,000 today. So in 7 short years, based on how our industries are growing and their projected growth, our active workforce is that's people going to work every day for employers in our community, is going to have to be 121,000. So there's demand for new jobs. Employers need employees to grow, and the projections are that they're going to grow because we're in a growing market that way. That number actually surprised me. I didn't think it would be on that pace, but it is. Another factor to weigh into this is that if you look at our current workforce, 27% of our active workforce is age 55 plus. Now, I don't mean to offend anybody. I'm bringing my gray hair to the podium along with the rest of us, but we're an aging community, which means our workforce is aging. So over the 7 years that our industries are wanting to grow, we have to grow our workforce. At the same time that's happening, people are retiring out of the workforce. So we have in our community this perfect storm that says we better get busy about retaining and attracting our talent. I can tell you this, that based on the work that we do with company CEOs and some of the research we do, companies want to be in a community where talent wants to be. We do some additional analysis on this. We try and scour as much data and information as we can. We use a company called DCI. They're out of the Denver area. They do work nationally. They help look at talent attraction, other kinds of efforts. And they put out a report called Talent Wars. I've presented this to other groups and they've said, Steve, is this really a war? And really, when you think about it, it is. We're competing for talent. I want to give you a few numbers from their July 2023 analysis. And what they do is they interview every quarter 1,000 people who have relocated from one community to another community, at least 100 miles away, and they ask them, why did you move? And when you move, what were you looking for? And I want to give you that data in a second. As your economic development organization, we want to do our homework. And so that's why we look at that data. We're sending a team to New Orleans, not to stay there or do any work for the community of New Orleans, but there's a conference there called Young, Smart, and Local. It is community economic development leaders from all across the country. They're coming to this conference and they're talking about one subject. How do we retain and attract our talent? Now we're all going to get together and have a conversation about that, and then we're going to go back to our local communities and we're going to compete like heck to retain and attract our talent. So just know that we spend time, energy, and resources to understand this issue because it's essential to where we go economically. We talk to dozens of company CEOs a year looking to relocate our community. They ask us all the time about what's your infrastructure? What's the cost of doing business in your community? You know what else they're asking us about? Every single conversation talks about what's the quality of your community? What amenities do you have? And they tell us it's because they care about the well-being of their employees and they care about their ability to attract workforce to grow their company. And if we don't have that to present to that company, they're going to struggle to find workforce, and then we're not the community that they want to be in. So let me change the slide and give you some DCI. So when DCI did their last survey in July of this year, what they found was, why were you looking to relocate? And 45% of the respondents said, we want to have a better quality of life. Now, they define quality of life different from themselves. Each respondent's going to look at that just a little bit different. But if they're moving, they're searching for something better for themselves. Quality of life generally is an important, compelling reason. Then they ask them this question. Okay, you're going to move for a better quality life. What are you looking for in the community you want to relocate to? That's very important information. They're going to look at things like cost of living, the availability of housing, but third on the list was this. They want to live, work, and play in the same community. They don't want to have to commute 100 miles away to go somewhere. They want to feel like the amenities are there in their community, that they can do all those things, live, work, and play in their same community. That's really compelling information. They also list things like quality of education, healthcare, all of that is important. It's a comprehensive list, but they also want to make sure that that well-being is there for themselves and their families. All right, I'll leave you with this, and I think I've gone over my 3 minutes. I'm getting the eye from the city administrator. When you look at all those factors, the top tier of those factors, outdoor recreation, access to that, open space, parks, trails, it ranks in the top 20% of all those things people are looking at. I've been doing this job working on behalf of the community for 15 years. And I can tell you in that 15 years, I've had to change my own thinking about what are those essential ingredients to attract companies to help our existing community go. Infrastructure is still important, cost of doing business is important, but so is the quality of life is important. So from the DCI report, I want to share with you one quote, and then I'll leave you. The DCI report says this: data confirms that employers and communities must promote more than just the job itself to win talent. The quality of the community is part of that conversation. And I think I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. It is a real pleasure to get to work with economic development professionals. I too had to change my thinking. I started in that business about 25 years ago in the Midwest, and it was just about cheap ground, rail, and interstate access. That's where jobs were perceived to be. Now, the jobs are following where people go. So I'm going to talk about how much this will cost you and me and our residents in our community if voters say yes. So what you see here is that this assumes that all $143 million in bond come on next year, in 1 year. That will not actually happen, but I think we want to talk about this conservatively as to the high water mark. So this assumes it all happens and goes on based on our current tax rate or taxable value. Essentially, for each $100,000 of value that your home is, it's $53. The median home in Billings, Montana, after reappraisal, is now up to $307,000. That $307,000 is $162 a year is what that homeowner would pay. Now, back to statistics class, if I can say that word. The median is the dead center home in Billings. Line all the homes up, and 24,000 homeowners are going to pay less than this number, and 24,000 homeowners are going to pay more than this number. And you pull out your tax bill, your new reappraisal, and see where you're at to give yourself kind of precisely how it affects you. Billings has really been fortunate in that it has seen a slow, steady growth for decades. I often said early, we're the tortoise who wins the race, right? If you look statistically, every decade, our community sees a steady 1.5% growth or so. Post-COVID, that number appears to be going up, but using real examples of tax base growth in Billings, this is when voters were asked to approve Dealer Park back in 2007. So this is a fixed debt amount. $143 million is the fixed debt amount when all the projects are funded. Back then, the estimate in today's dollars, where voters were asked to increase on the ballot 7.8 mils, or an estimate in today's dollars of about $32 a year. Today, that home, that median home is at $14.28, about half. Similarly, in 2012, when the voters approved the mill levy for this building that we're sitting in today, and we're fortunate to have, they were presented with a 7.6 mill levy increase. Today's dollars, that would be just shy of $32. And today, because of the growth in our tax base, we're levying just shy of 3 mils, or $12.17 for that. How do we compare to our other communities in Montana? So what Andy did here is we took the median valued home in each of these cities and then got the data relative to what that home is paying for their property tax bill. So if I own the median home, which is going to be a different value than our 307, but if I own a median home in Missoula, I'm going to be paying just north of $3,900 a year. That home in Bozeman, or not that home, the median in Bozeman is going to pay $35, just shy of $36. Here in Billings, we're at $27.37. The goal is not to catch Missoula, but it is to just show context as people ask, why don't we have some of the things in our community, or I want more things in our community, or I want less things in our community. I think there's you could see direct correlations between investments that voters make in their communities as well as property values and things like that. So that's just a little bit of context. We're actually going to stop here. Below this is a whole series of more slides. If people want to see specifically what is projected to happen at Castle Rock Park, where did we come up with dollars for the projects? So there's more information that if in the Q&A it makes sense to pull that up, or if you go to our website, billingsmt.gov, use it, or you choose to use the QR code. Victoria has done an excellent job working with the team to produce a whole series of buttons you can push on to get the information that's been presented to you tonight and more information relative to this question. And as she said, and she kicked us off so wisely, it's critical. We cannot, it is against the law for city employees to advocate for or against individuals running for office or bond questions that you're being asked. But we can educate, and that is our purpose on this subject. It is to arm you with the information so you can make the best decision, in your opinion, for you and your family in this regard. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Victoria.
Yeah, definitely check out the website, billingsmt.gov/parksbond2023. Like Chris said, there are a ton of buttons, and just when I thought I was done adding buttons, I add more buttons because there's lots of information out there. But anyone watching right now on Community 7 can go on to billingsmt.gov/bond questions and submit a question. I'll get that right to my email inbox. We did have some folks submit questions via index card, so I am going to read out the first one here, and then we'll open it up to the floor to anyone who wants to ask a question with us here in this room. So first question is, will taxpayer residents be charged to use the rec center? I feel like that might be a Mike or a Corey question maybe.
Thanks, Victoria. So the answer to that, it's a short or long answer. Yes, but we don't really know what that will be. It's a facility will be similar to other facilities around the region. There's one in Williston, Dickinson, places like that. You can probably go to those places and find out kind of what they're looking to pay, and that would be a very similar charge. The goal of the rec center is to be a community rec center, and so the idea is to keep the prices as low as possible, but you still have to operate the facility, and so yes, there would be a charge to use it.
All right, thank you very much, Mike, and I'll go right over here to our first question. I'll hold the mic for you, and I will put it right up to your mouth, because if you're not eating it like ice cream, then we can't hear you.
Yes, I was part of the planning committee, and I believe it's important to note, I don't know if this is a phrase, question, but residential fees will likely be lower than non-residential fees for that. That was what was done in the pricing model. So if you're paying taxes on this facility, you should have a lower cost to use the facility than people who aren't paying taxes for the facility.
Correct. It is a recognition that it is the taxpayers inside the city limits who are paying the debt on this. So there will be a differential there. I will also say that one of the commitments that's been made by the foundation, the Parks Foundation, is that they will raise an additional $25,000 annually. That'll be added to what we spend, roughly about $8,000 that's spent annually providing scholarships for children and seniors and individuals who cannot afford to pay the fees necessary to use the facility. That was very important to the council, and it's very important to our community that people have access, but it's not free. These are assets that need to be properly maintained, and we need to be well prepared that when the roof needs to be replaced, when the pump needs to be replaced in the pool, we're not standing here saying we've run it into the ground and we have no money. Please, will you keep it operational?
Thank you very much, Chris, and we do have our next question back here.
Yes, this is more a question about the uses of the pool. And I know you don't have it all delineated what you can all use, but I would like to probably have in your idea that you might use the pool for scuba classes and for water rescue, because that's a critical thing that's going to be happening in the future around the community.
Thank you very much. And I do want to say I did receive a question via email. This question is, will there be opportunities for public input regarding the final design for different activity spaces at the rec center? Whichever one of you wants to take that one.
Sure. So the long answer on that one is yes, there is community input on all of the projects. So per the resolution, there will be committees that were developed for each one of the projects, and then they'll take that community input and apply that to the design. So there'll be a large amount of community input on all of the designs, not just the rec center, but what goes on in Castle Rock Park, what goes on in Centennial Park. All of the parks will have community input on those.
Thank you very much, Mike. And next question from the audience.
Yeah, I want to, what's that? Oh, close. So, if I understand it right, the $25 million towards the sportsplex is coming out of the Southside Urban Development, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
And the Southside taxpayers are the ones footing that $25 million.
That is correct. So that's not a tax increase, but it is taxes that are collected from inside that boundary, because it's tax increment financing that can only be spent in the boundary, but they were collected from everybody who owns property inside that boundary since, I mean, that's the annual collection. the values were frozen or a picture was taken the year that the district starts, and all the increase in value that happens from that fixed amount, from the time they take that photo as an analogy, that money before that continues to go to schools, county, city, state. After that point, has to be spent inside the district boundaries, and it is tax dollars.
Okay, so Southside's paying 25% of this sportsplex.
Awfully close to that, because 110 and 85 is in the bond, and 25 is pretty darn close to 25%.
So if this passes, we'll pay another $100 per 100,000 on our property.
53 per 100,000.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Yeah, but we'll be paying more for the sportsplex. We've already chipped in 25%.
I'm going to have Andy's thinking something here.
Yeah, just to be clear, the money that comes from the South tax increment bonds does not increase taxes within the district. That is money on taxes currently being paid.
Right.
So
I guess my point is, I think the South Side is taking a pounding right now on taxes, and I'll be happy to show any council members. I have a piece of property on the South Side. It's valued at $338,000. Southside urban development taxes yearly are $1,955 a year. That's huge. And now we'll also be paying more for the sportsplex too. And I know all that money's not going towards the sportsplex, but I think the Southside people need to take a look at their taxes. We're getting pounded pretty hard.
sure. So if the tax increment district did not exist, your tax bill would be nearly identical. It would be identical to what it is today. It's just a matter of where those tax dollars go.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Southside's taking a pounding.
Sure.
That's what I want to make.
All right, thank you very much. I do have another question that came in via email. This question is, will any funding be directed to improving safety at the Billings Skate Park? Can anything be done about the homeless problem on site?
So the skate park issue is an ongoing issue, and we agree to that. This does not recognize any inputs to be placed at the skate park. I will tell you, though, that there's a community group that has come to me, and we have putting together a proposal to bring to the park board and to city council on ways that we can improve the safety at the skate park. So there is a design, there is a proposal out there, and they are raising the funds. We're looking for grant funding, we're looking for donations. We're going to go out and do that without adding to the city budget. We're going to improve the safety of the skate park. There's also, we've got a large group that is trying to activate the space more, so they're holding concerts and things like that down there. And the chief would point out that, by activating those spaces, we're definitely helping with the safety. So, but the bond does not include any money for that.
Thank you very much, Mike, and I'll go to our next question in the audience here. I'll hand you off the mic.
Page 3 in the resolution indicates that PD1 assessments will end in calendar year 2024. So this might be a question for Andy, but we're limited in how much we can assess. We're at a mill levy cap for the general fund. So what is going away when we put park maintenance in the general fund?
Yep. So currently fiscal year 24, which is started July 1, the tax base of the city grew about 22%. You all got reappraisal notices and probably observed something similar on your property. With that growth, our cap is still at 74 mills. We have enough capacity in the general fund to get rid of Park District 1 and fund parks entirely through the general fund.
Sorry, thanks. And that's exactly what the city council did. So the adopted budget includes exactly what Andy said. So that commitment that's made in that resolution has already taken place. And then statutorily, that district was going to sunset in the next, I think, 12 or 24 months if the voters did not re-up it. We will not be going to the voters to re-up it. It's been absorbed into the general fund. So when you see your property tax bill this year, you'll see that last year there was a Park District 1 fee, and you'll see a higher property tax fee, and one says 0 for Park District 1, and those monies got moved down to a mill levy cost.
Thank you very much. And we do have another question that was written into us. Is there a public link to see the assumptions of economics of the rec center, visitors, revenues, operation costs?
The Victus study. So what we need to look at, Victoria, is do we have the Victus study linked on our website? And I'm not certain on that, but if it is not, we can absolutely make that happen within the next 24 hours. It's a public document, and it outlines the specifics of all the assumptions and various things that went into their conclusion that $25 million in annual economic activity would take place, how much revenue could be generated from naming rights and a whole series of other ways to take the operations cost off of being on property taxes. All that, if it's not linked today, we will get it linked because it is public information, it's critical information to understanding how we're paying operational costs.
Yep, one more button on the website. All right, next question here, and if you have a question that you'd like to ask next, feel free to raise your hand. $57 million for parks and trails, $86 million for rec center. But does the bond levy prevent transferring money from parks and trails to the rec center if the rec center goes over budget?
If you look at the resolution that the council passed, I just happened to read it last night for this issue. So it's section 1, paragraph 2, combined with paragraph 4, or section 4. That's what I explained earlier. 2 specifically identifies essentially the graphic that describes how much money is going to be invested in each of the projects. So you'll see Castle Rock Park, you'll see Centennial Park, etc., and you'll see a dollar figure next to it. Then in section 4 of that same, or paragraph 4 of that same section, it outlines how only the city council, or that all projects would be brought to a council work session, then to a council regular meeting, before debt can be approved, ultimately to make the decisions as to what is going to be built in this debt package that we're taking on in this next section. So you will not find the words that say you cannot move funds from one project to another, but you will find plenty of language that the council is the driver, and specifically what we anticipate today the dollar commitments are, and that's what I would anticipate myself and anyone sitting in our seats will need to answer to and describe how we're accomplishing that.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'll go on to the next question on our cards here. Will the rec center operate at a money loss? So will another bond issue be required to pay for its dollar loss?
So yes, it will run at a loss, as I said earlier. That is why the TBID, that is part of the Victus study as to how to bring in revenue from various sources, as well as the hoteliers have agreed to raise that bed tax from $2 to $4 voluntarily so that they can cover that operations loss. No, there will not be a future bond. That doesn't mean there would never be a conversation in the future about maintenance and operation, which wouldn't be a bond. Every, I think, 5 to 7 years in Billings, Montana, very candidly with our 1977 charter that has a hard cap in the mill levy, these are discussions that our community needs to have relative to, has our tax base grown enough to cover proper levels of expansion and or maintenance of our facilities or not, and are we agreeable to adjusting our tax rate to make up that difference? But that would not be a bond on the operational side, that would be a levy to take care of things. Thank you.
All right, and our next question. The interest will be $12 million per year. Where does that come from? Another tax. And here comes Andy, our finance director, to answer that.
Sure. So, So the question on the ballot is, do you want to authorize City Council to borrow $143 million? We, just like you, the city cannot borrow money for free, so we pay back principal plus interest. The annual cost represented here anticipates borrowing at 4% and paying back both principal and interest. So the anticipated interest cost is captured there. The reason I chose 4% is we recently issued water bonds for the West End Reservoir. We were able to borrow at 3.6 something percent. So it's realistic to think that yes, the city can borrow tax exempt at around 4%. But yeah, that's how that's derived at. So yes, we would repay more than $143 million because we would have to pay those borrowing costs, but that is captured within this annual cost, assuming that we would borrow at 4%.
Do we have any other questions from the audience at this time?
Another question about housing values. You showed a slide. Andy, that's not the slide that you were referring to. That's when you were referring to something. That slide was showing, but I don't think that's what you're talking about. But I do have a question about that slide. You mentioned the total cost. That has nothing to do with the bond issue. That slide right there. But you kept referring to it.
For the total cost, so this slide represents what the anticipated annual tax levy would be to pay back the debt. Okay, so if you had a home worth $500,000, you could expect that if we were to borrow all $143 million today, your tax bill would be $263 per year.
Okay, I appreciate that. The question was, how much will the interest on the bond be annually?
So again, we're assuming, we have to make an assumption because we won't know what the actual interest rate will be until that day that we borrow the money. But based upon our most recent borrowing, the assumption here is that we borrow at 4%. Total interest rate, at 4%, I believe the total payment, principal and interest, is like $210 million. So that'd be $60, $70 million in interest over 20 years. But it won't be exactly 4% that we borrow at, but that's what we've used for an assumption.
Right now, it's $70 million, you think, over 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. But the question about this slide is, what was the, see, that's the $300,000, the median price home, the amount of tax. What was the tax, that same home, what was that tax amount in 2021 and 2022? I'm sure you know.
So for the median home?
That same
well, yeah, the median home value last year, gosh, I don't have that up. Yeah, I want to. We do? All right. Well, look, you came prepared.
Well, you made it, so.
All right, even better. Hey, there it is. Perfect. Thank you. So I came prepared. So yeah, this slide represents what the tax bill was last year in Billings. The median home was $228,100, and so the city portion of that, taxes and assessments, $940, and so on. You can see each taxing jurisdiction. So $2,500. This year, it's $307,600, and the estimated tax bill is just over $3,000. This does not include anything for bonds. So yeah.
So on top of that, we have the 156, whatever it is.
Correct. Yep.
And I have one question back here, and then I'll go up to you in the front.
I think we kind of glanced over this, and I just want a clarification, but if a project is funded and I guess maybe they have still funds on the project and the city, they want to maybe transfer the funds from one project to another project. I think when I was reading through it that the city council has to approve that. Is that correct?
Yes, per the resolution, the council is the one who will see specifically what the budgets are for each project, so that when they approve taking on $50 million to say the first chunk of borrowing, they are the ones who will see they'll see the estimates for all the various components, and if anything is different from what we assume today, they are the entity to decide if anything can be shifted and moved. That's not anticipated. I think the worst case scenario is we don't, if the fundraising or the cost goes up considerably, what will we need to trim on projects to bring it in line with the financial commitment we made to each project? Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we'll get great news and bids will come in great, much more competitively. But that's the scenario.
All right, and our next question up front here. This is a follow-up question to this slide. I heard you say earlier that we used to be assessed a Parks District tax that's being rolled off. So do you know the difference?
Sure.
What percentage of my taxes went to the Parks Fund versus what will go toward this?
So on your tax bill, you had taxes up at the top and assessments down at the bottom. And your Park District 1 was an assessment. It was a function of taxable value. Taxes are a function of taxable value as well. So we have enough growth that Park District 1 assessment is gone, and now it is in your general fund tax. These represent taxes and assessments, so you're comparing apples to apples here. Second, the portion of the median home that was Park District 1 was right around $50 a year. But then in addition to that, we also had general fund contribution for Parks and Rec. So your typical home was paying, more than $50 a year for Parks and Rec. I don't know offhand though what it was, to be honest with you. But because I chose taxes and assessments, you're comparing apples to apples here, even with Park District 1 going away.
Can you just touch on the percentage of the budget?
Yeah, so overall, the Parks and Rec department relative to the city as a whole is between 3 and 3.5% of the city's entire budget. The largest portion being your utilities, and because the large infrastructure there and quite a bit of investment there.
What I would add to that is you would certainly see that increase during the capital years that these projects would be built, but then when the debt retirement payments come on, our speculation is I'm going to assume it doubles. You're going to go from roughly 3.5% of the annual budget being spent on parks, rec, open spaces to about 7%. I don't know that number down to it, but I think it gives a little bit of context. I think that some of these numbers are so big that people might think all of a sudden, whoa, are we spending 20% of our budget or 50% of our budget in this area? That will not be the case and is not the case.
May I ask a second question? All right, I have a second question. I'm super excited about the trail projects, and I would love to know a little bit more about Stagecoach and Yellow Jacket. Yellow Jacket seems to be the walking trail that goes down from MSUB up to the top, which would be amazing because currently people just walk in a little dirt track, which seems super unsafe. But I'd love a little bit more context for those.
Okay, so currently the Stagecoach Trail is all the way designed, and it's mostly funded through a grant. So, and if you go to that website, it shows some really nice pictures of what the Stagecoach. Oh, do we have pictures? Okay.
We're gonna see if we can find.
So we can find the trail. So that's already been, we've got it designed and engineered out. We have hard costs on that. And then the Yellow Jacket Trail is another one that goes down 27th, like you said, and it actually is built in conjunction with the road. So we would work with MDT to change how the road's aligned and then put the trail right along the edge of that road. So it still stays on that same line, but it would be a safer path, like you say. But as you can see, the Stagecoach Trail, it actually wanders off of Zimmerman because we're trying to make it as accessible as possible, lower the slope so that we wind it around back in that area. Does that answer your question, huh? Okay.
All right, and I do have another question that came in. I have heard this referred to as a $200 million bond. What is the actual bond amount?
So the bonded amount is 143, as was answered in the question earlier. If you calculate what the interest would be over the debt retirement payment, I think that's where some people are talking about the number north of 200 million. The bonded amount is 143. Let me add one other component to the fundraising, similar to this building. So the commitments to raise the $6 million, actually the commitments that we have in hand today right? We can speak of $3 million of commitments, very significant from PAR, right? They've publicly announced that. They're not going to hand the city their million or their additional million match. They're going to give it to us over 10 years, just like this project. When the debt retirement calculation is made to pay the debt on the $143 million, those donations, provided they come in, will come off of that amount, and we will levy less than that dollar figure. Anything else you'd add, Andy? So that's how the commitments work and the pledges work without everybody having to say, my pledge means I'm cutting a check today.
All right, and I believe I saw a hand back here, and then I'll get to you up front here.
Thank you for your presentations. I have one question, two questions. One question is on the economic development end of it. So you Steve, I believe, talking about how companies want to come here and people want to come here not just for the job but for all the amenities of the city. And I can see that, but what is the city doing in saying, hey, what are you bringing as a corporation or a company to Billings to, help fund all this and improve our cities? It's always it seems in Billings, I've lived here since 1974, it seems that it's always been, we need to get all these companies in here to do business, and yet we're not asking them, what are you giving back to the community to make Billings a better community that y'all said that is the purpose of this? So my time in Billings, a lot of things are better in Billings, but a lot of things are not better. I don't like, just growth for growth's sake. So that's my first question. The second one is, in terms of the Zimmerman Center at Pioneer Park, where would that actually be located, and what are the concerns about additional traffic congestion and so forth? Thank you.
I'll do my best to address the question. I'm trying to, as we speak to companies that are looking to come here, those are several dozen conversations a year. Most of our conversations are with our existing businesses, which will be where most of our economic growth comes from. So I can tell you from the companies that I work with on a daily basis, some of them on my board of directors, some of them we work with through our workforce program, or maybe some that we work through our finance program, they're contributing now. They're making new private investment in our community. They're doing job creation. The people they hire are buying homes, paying taxes. They're contributing to our economics right now, and they have every intention of doing that. The question they ask me is, what are you doing to help us find the talent we need to continue to grow economically? And what is the community doing to invest so that we can retain and attract our talent? They're basically asking the same question of the company I had here in town just 2 weeks ago, who was more concerned about what kind of community this was going to be for their employees. What's the quality? What are your amenities? We had little conversation. There was no conversation about what are my taxes? It was about, I want to be a part of this community. I want to contribute to the community. I want to make sure it's a good quality community for my talent, because they know if the community's not right, what they do as a business will be handicapped every single day. And so I think the broad spectrum of conversations that we've had with existing communities and new community businesses and new businesses looking at our community, we want a quality community. What can we do to participate in that? You saw that in Parr, Montana, stepping up and saying our people live here. The well-being of our employees matter to us, and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is. That's the sentiment of most of the companies, if not all, that we work with today.
So a quick follow-up on that. For new companies, has any of those companies said, hey, if Billings approves all this, we're going to pretty much come in and move here and make your community that much better and spread the tax base and so forth? Has anyone said new businesses will come here if you build this?
Yeah, no one has said, hey, Steve, if you guys don't do this, we're going to somewhere. No one's drawn that direct correlation to this, but we are asked, what is your community doing to enhance the quality of your community? We are asked that almost on a consistent basis.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, and this next question, we're actually going to have Mike answer, and we do have a slide on the Zimmerman Center and its current situation, and then if you want to explain the picture on top too, Mike.
Oh, sure. We actually got the picture on top. That's the building when it's under construction. It was a fire hall back in 1948. I'm not so certain they didn't run horses out of it to haul the wagon. But anyways, so the Zimmerman Center is actually just a concept right now. We don't have the exact location or the impact that it would have on traffic or parking. I would imagine as we build that out and we get the community input on that to help us design it and figure out the exact location, it would also include parking and how we would minimize the impact on the streets and traffic.
So you would be taking out several trees in the park to accommodate for a larger area and parking, because that little parking, I mean, this is a mess, okay? This is an old place and needs to be redone for sure. Small parking lot, but you're probably thinking of taking out some, old heritage trees that are in the park to accommodate a new building.
So I would say this is whenever we do something like this, we first off we would get community input on all of those issues. We also, when we ever do a design like this, we would look to minimize the impact on the existing infrastructure. So if we can use an existing parking lot, we're going to do that. If we can keep the existing trees, we're going to do that because we know what it takes to grow a tree in Billings, Montana. So I agree. We don't want to take out all those heritage trees, but at the same time, we would find a location that fits the best.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we have our next question right over here.
Yes, this is directed for the Economic Development Center. So I actually am a business right now, headhunting for some talent right now. We're looking for someone with 10 to 20 to 30 years of experience that we're trying to lure here to live here. And there's a number of challenges that I'm facing right now. This is the first time I've ever done something like this. I got to figure out how am I going to get this person over here? How much am I going to put up front? And of course, where are they going to live? I mean, the housing market isn't exactly the best it's ever been right now. But what I'm really interested in is the studies that you had on one of these slides regarding how, and what you said earlier about businesses like myself coming up to you saying hey, what are you doing to help attract more talent over here? So exactly where can I go and what can I do to try to sell Billings to somebody anyways? And how much is this going to improve my ability to sell Billings as a place to come here and work for me?
So to the first part of your question, we have a website called Better Off in Billings, and there's an employer toolkit on that website. It allows you to grab content. So if you're trying to attract someone in another community, maybe far away, never been to Billings, has no clue what's going on here, I would send them the link to that Better Off in Billings website. It'll give them a sense of the character of our community, what's going on in our community. And then as an employer, you can grab content, infographics, video content from that website and couple that with your own business information and send that to a prospect. And we make that information to all the available to all the employers in our community. So it's Better Off in Billings is the website. And I think it's just Better Off in Billings. Tom, is it .org or .com? Org. BetterOffinBillings.org. That would be a website to grab some of that information. The other part of your question,
Exactly how much is this going to improve? Exactly. I mean, right now we have trails, we have parks, we have some kind of amenities other than the recreation center where we're talking about actually putting in some real ice rinks and making it where it's accessible to freeze gate every now and then. Other than that, I don't see a whole lot of brand new things that is going to say we've made a huge investment, and I don't know what's the big shiny thing? What's the biggest bang for our buck on this? Is it the recreation center or is it these trails?
You're going to ask me to pick a trail over a rec center. Here's what I will do, though. I will say that to my point about using the term talent wars, we are competing for talent. You're finding this out in your work right now. Every single employer is finding this out. So we can't sit on our hands and say, oh, well, you've got to be an active participant. If you're in a competition, you have to be an active participant. So as a community, we need to be strategically investing in the quality and character of our community. We have I'm probably way over answering this question, but we have master plans for parks projects almost that deep. We, as a community, we've been planning the full development of our park system and to a certain extent our trail system for decades. Most of those, if not all of those master plans, somebody has these on their bookshelf or in their desk, or you sit on them. I'm not sure what you do with them. But what they have done, they involved citizen input. They were master plans that got people's input, and the community visioned what it wanted its parks to look like. And those master plans are sitting there waiting for us and our leaders to take a bold step to say, we're going to start investing in the quality of a community based on the input we've already received from our citizens about doing our parks and trails. I would say that I've done this work in economic development for a number of years. We used to talk about what's the tax break you're going to get, do you have land? What is it that you're going to do for me? I promise you, 99% of the conversation is around talent and the quality of your community. If we invest in that, we're going to be a much better place for people to live, and that's where businesses want to be. It's just a shift in how communities are now approaching economic development. It starts with the core of community development and building a quality community. You make this investment, I promise you, that it will distinguish our community in a significant way. And I base that on 20 years of experience doing redevelopment and economic development work.
Excellent, Steve. The only components I would add is that those master plans have been made, and Mike, help me out here if I get it off. They're about community parks that have been identified some years or decades ago. These projects are predominantly finishing projects that have been on the drawing boards. There isn't a lot of expansion. The trail network is one of those areas. Most of these projects deliberately are based on the community feedback and the direction from our elected body is let's finish what we have and what we've started before we start venturing into more areas. Now, my last plug would be, yes, like it or not, Billings, pick a number. There's going to be 200,000 people, maybe 250. You name the number. That is how many people are going to end up in Billings, just like you see on the west side of the state. The question is how long is it going to take, not if it's going to happen. So from a planning perspective, I do think our community does need to start talking a whole lot more about what is going to make Billings an awesome city to live in at 250,000, not just what have we got to do to catch up from the things we haven't been doing for the past many decades. If we're going to have the foresight to do the best job we can to have a vibrant city decades down the road. So, thank you.
Yes, when you're talking about the trees and parking, that brings a thought to me that with the urban forestry guy and the Northern Plains Resource Council and the Yellowstone City Council with the Northern Plains, they're looking at trying to see how you can integrate the tree layout with the parking so that you have actually parking areas where people can actually park their cars under the trees and not have them broiling hot when they come out from a store or a building. So that's an ongoing thing that's going on right now, and they're working with the city council on providing that kind of impetus on getting things on that line. So, yeah, so any type of development would be enhanced by that.
Project Recode, we talked about that as one of those 5 strategies to building a better city. Recode did change some of the standards so that you would see drought resistant, but more green and things of that nature to bring down heating costs, bring down cooling costs, provide more shade, it increases value, etc. And we did just get an announcement here in the last 2 weeks that we did receive a federal grant for $1 million to do a quality plan for an urban forest and plant trees in our areas of town where we don't have boulevard trees. So that was an exciting federal grant that our forester and a group of citizens in our community and under Mike Pigg's leadership put together and received that announcement just here in the past few weeks.
And our next question.
Hello. Question about public safety and the link between the parks. You know, this investment being not some kind of extra frill, but good fundamentals, I guess. My question would be if there's an example that you can point to where investment in a public park led to some tangible improvements in public safety.
Certainly, I have to say it is very, very nice to not be the center of attention and the main focus of one of these forums. So you get after these guys. I appreciate that very much. Well, again, there is some statistics that you can find. Eric referenced the one that I was looking at. We did see in another state 29% decrease in gun violence around improved areas and spaces. But we just talk about the whole concept. Let's take it out of the parks realm and put it into a business, put it into a residential area. When you start keeping your place clean, well kept, well lit, people around, it generally is a deterrent to criminal activity. They don't want to be around when that's all taking place. They don't like, they're looking for crimes of opportunity more likely than not, things that are laying around. And so when you take the effort to clean your property, secure it up, if somebody does something, you get on it right away, which basically says that, you don't establish ownership. We're talking about graffiti, clean it up right away. That sends a message about the social engagement, the social connection, and what it is the community thinks. And let's just go to your house. You take pride in your house, and if something happens, you're going to fix it and clean it up, and so you're not going to defeat me. And so the same thing transcends into the park on the same scale. We know 100% that light is a crime deterrence. So if we get some well-lit areas that can be seen from the street, conversely, people in the park can see the street. We talk about, making the edges of the park a safe area, cleaning the stuff up, making it so people don't want to go there because you have families doing what they're doing, and so that's the best tangible evidence I can get. It's going to be incumbent upon park staff to put people in the parks and working it, running the programs and doing all that. One of the conversations I had offline with a council member was improving a park. And the question was, if they do this and they don't have any people to manage it, what's going to happen? Well, you just created a nice facility with nobody there. People are going to go there. They're going to park and party and do whatever they do. So only part of it is to improve the facilities per se. The follow-up is that we got to staff it, make it vibrant, activate it. That's everything that everybody's been talking about here. If you do that across the board, it doesn't matter your neighborhood, your business downtown, and I referenced that SEPTED thing, which we put in place downtown. We haven't had the issues this year that we've had in years past. Using that concept transcends directly into the parks and what they're trying to do with that. That answer your question? Thank you.
All right, and we have someone back here who would like to share something.
I have, last night I went out at
at dusk, and I went to the 6 parks that are going to be up for discussion next week each day, and I took pictures, started at dusk, and I was home by 9 o'clock. Needless to say, I left the engine running, I left the lights on, and I left the doors locked. I'm going to put these pictures up on the table here for everybody to look at. I put on the back of the picture, it'll say which park it is, and it directly corresponds to Chief St. John's. It's all about the lighting, folks. That's the safety part. None of you would have gone out last night with your family or your wife or your kids. I had my wife in the car with the doors locked. It wasn't even 9 o'clock I was home. I wanted to do this after 10 last night, and I chickened out. So these parks are open until 10. It was 72 degrees out last night, and not one person at any of these 6 parks was engaged in any outdoor activities. The only thing I saw were people laying around under trees, on lit picnic tables, and I'll lay the pictures out. I don't have any pictures of individuals. I think that was right, but it isn't even safe for people that are handicapped to go out on these sidewalks because there's no lighting, there's weeds. I mean, it's not safe. You're going to be trying to save life. I'm going to lay the pictures out. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm glad he did share and mention that there are 6 information sessions happening next week. We have, we have Centennial Park, we have Poly Vista Park. If you go to billingsmt.gov/parksbond 2023, you'll see dates and times. There's a event page, and you'll be able to look at the calendar and find out where we will be each day of the week. Does anyone else have any other questions at this time?
What was that website again?
It's billingsmt.gov/parksbond 2023. I can probably say it in my sleep, that's why I say it so fast. So, all right, we have a question back here.
I've seen comments from people on social media saying, we have other priorities we need to do first. I want this, but maybe not right now. How about in 2 years, whatever. So realistically, if the voters don't agree to this bond this year to get these projects started now, what will our next opportunity be to start making these critical investments for Billings?
I don't think there's a definitive answer to that. I think with all the conversations that have been happening over the past several years, it's not going to just lie there. But there's absolutely the risk that the community says, well, it's no, we're going to have to wait years to re-ask something like this, or will this be broken down into component parts, whether they're just component parts. But I think it's extremely unlikely that you would see this package of projects coming right back to the voters within months. I don't see that happening. So
it's probably safe to say that we would be setting ourselves back probably another half a decade to a decade for some of these projects that have been set back already 30 plus years.
I will let you speak, your words speak to that as your assumption and what you've seen in our community. I'm also going to take advantage of that opportunity to thank this city council. The past 5 years, we have been, and they have been willing to tackle these tough questions. It is honestly a whole lot easier to say no. And they've wrestled through this, the community has wrestled through it, and you have here, because of their leadership and community leadership, you've got an opportunity. And that's what we have. It is before the voters, for the voters to make the decision on. And times change and information is different. If I were in this seat 10 years ago, I might have been making exactly the same recommendations that whoever was sitting in my seat made. But today is what Steve and I deal with, what you're dealing with me trying to make decisions even in my own family with daughters who are 24 and 21 and 16. That's different than when they were 5 and 3 and 1 as to what choices they make. So I am very grateful that your city council on public safety, these are the strategies that they've agreed will build a healthier and safer Billings.
It's a comment, not a question. I think the city council made a very strategic mistake when they combined both categories together, the rec center and the $57 million for the parks and trails, and they kept them separated on the ballot. The $57 million for parks and trails would have passed with ease. Okay, it's a combination of the parks and trails, $57 million, and the $86 million rec center that people don't like. They are being forced to approve both. If the city council had broken them out into 2 separate ballots, Parks and Trails would have won in a slam dunk. I don't know about the rec center, but I know the Parks and Trails would have won. Easy, because people I talk to say that. I'm not voting for a rec center. Why are they making me vote for a rec center? If they just let me vote for Parks and Trails, I would have voted for Parks and Trails. That's all I can hear.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, one right here. Here we go.
Yeah, I have a question. I read through the proposal and on the skating rink thing, if this goes, as I understand it, the Centennial Arena will no longer be. It'll be gone. So in essence, we'll only have one skating area. That would be the west end in this facility. Is that right?
So it is. It is my understanding that the Centennial Ice Facility is some 3 decades past its useful life. It's hanging on by a thread. They have indicated in public meetings that they will not. They are fully supporting this as a replacement and an addition of Centennial, and that the location I would not say is on the west side. The location is in the Suburra. Next to Amon Park is the location that it will be built. So yes, it's a replacement. 2 sheets, not one. Currently there's one. It is, I was told by hockey players who work for us as staff that it just last night or 2 nights ago, they were wondering if they were going to be able to use it. But this will replace Centennial. The intention is it will fold up and go away because of its condition.
Okay, and then the other thing, the comment, I agree with the prior gentleman. I voted for one or the other, but this is an awful big pill to ask us to swallow. So, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, very much. I'll let our city administrator wrap things up.
I just want to thank you guys for taking the time tonight to come, to listen, to ask questions. I want to thank our panelists. I think it's fantastic to have economic development and public health and public safety and senior services, us all here together, our elected officials. A number of them are here tonight. This is being televised and recorded. It will be replayed on Channel 7 and other areas for information. Please, either the QR code, if that's your thing, or billingsmt.gov. You can get a wealth of information on this, and then in there's a Q&A section as well. When you find something that you can't find the answer to, ask it. And we've got a staff team of several people who are looking throughout every day to make sure that none of that stuff is sitting stale, but that we're getting answers to those questions. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your consideration. Remember, ballots are mailed out on the 18th. Probably show up in your mailbox on the 19th. They must be in the election office on election day. They can't be postmarked election day. My understanding, they need to be in the election office on election day. So thank you so much.